All right. So this is for everybody here live and watching on the replay. Um, we had a wonderful tribe meeting last night, so hopefully you guys got to watch that video. And I'll be sending this out for those who are not here live. And today at the mini astrological coffee talk with Eric, we're talking. But we're talking about a very powerful transit. Saturn returning to Pisces, which will not happen for another 29 years, right? From September 1st to February 20th, 2026. Now remember, Neptune comes back in October 22nd, and then they dance together for the exact conjunction in Aries. I believe it's either on February 20th or the 21st, but they will both be at the exact degree and minute. And so, probably next January, I will be doing that at Coffee Talk to get us ready for that energy, because it's going to be a lot. But this is very helpful because, what Saturn is, the karmic teacher. Let's bring this up. Saturn returning to Pisces from the 1st of September to February 20th, 2026. Saturn is the karmic teacher. And there are a lot of lessons, right? Because remember, before this last 2.5, 3 years of this transit, we had 6 years of Saturn being in its home signs, which took us through the pandemic and then kind of after, or during and after, right? Remember, it was the Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Mars conjunction in Capricorn that started the lockdown in March, and Saturn, Pluto that started kind of the energy of what they would see like the pestilence, right, of the virus in January. So if you kind of go back and look at those charts, it's kind of chilling. And I kind of brought it up again. I did a coffee talk on it, but I brought it up again the other day because something had come up, I think, researching in my book, because I wanted to show that alignment in there. And it's almost done. We're actually editing now, but I'm just adding a couple little nuggets in. And it was like Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all in Capricorn. And we all know what that all was about, but it's very powerful. And so Saturn now being in Pisces and closing up this chapter for the final time for the next 29 years, we're really seeing the themes of because Saturn wants to check in. Have you been responding to your abilities? Have you implemented the healthy boundaries? How is your spiritual discipline and practice? How is your discipline, organization, and structure, right? How are you dealing with some of the Pisces themes of the illusion, deception, confusion, right? What's going on in your own life where you're being over self-sacrificing or playing the victimization card, right? So this is a very powerful energy in transit. And so this is at 4:07 a.m. Eastern. I'm doing New York at September 1st, okay? And so, I thought I would just do the general and then kind of go through all 12 rising signs. And obviously the benefit for you guys being here, we can, hone in, when we get to it, you could just say, yeah, this is my sign, rising sign, and kind of just talk about Saturn and Pisces. But as we look at it, we're dealing with the Leo rising, obviously the Virgo sun in the second house, and the Sag moon. But I'm going to zoom in. But what I thought was really interesting, and obviously we see the Saturn and Pisces over here, coming in. Neptune is on its heels, but that's not to October 22nd. So it's still got to get to the 0 degree. And it's currently, as we speak, at 1 degree now as well. But, we're experiencing this September 1st, but this is describing the energy, this chart of what we will go through all through to February 20th. Now, obviously, in between then, Uranus goes back to Taurus, November 7th. October 22nd, Neptune joins the party of Saturn back in Pisces. Chiron and Pluto will stop their retrograde. So, there's just a lot of different movements. But remember, you're always, when you're looking at a transit, you're taking a snapshot of the ingress of that energy. And that in itself is like starting the vacation, starting the birth chart. So that's how you look at that in transit, and it's very helpful. So one thing when you're looking at the chart ruler of the Leo and the ascendant being in the middle, even if we're looking at California or Arizona or whatever, chances are it's gonna stay at that Leo ascendant. So that's kind of helpful. And now, Venus is there. That came in on August 25th, I think. So that's coming in on Monday or the 26th. But Venus is going to be in Leo for a while, which I think will be, kind of a nice energy in terms of us stepping into a little bit of fun, joy, play, and gratitude, which is what we're, going to need at this time. But, the ruler, right, of the ascendant is the sun in Virgo, okay? And so the node and the sun are not opposing Saturn directly. They are by sign and house. But, when you're still dealing with the south node and Virgo's getting closer to being conjuncted, and just know it's staying at this 18 degrees for a while. Remember, the nodes are here on the health axis of Virgo and Pisces until July 2026. So the nodes are always like a 16, 18 month transit and cycle. So, and then even as we go to the Aquarius North Node and Leo South Node, just like we did last spring, you'll have one more like partial or like eclipse on the Virgo Pisces axis. So it always works that way. It's kind of interesting as they kind of trade off and pass the baton to the nodes. It does that. But, having this energy and having the Virgo sun in the second house of our values, our food, speech, our intuition, we're going to have to get our money and our health in order. Accounting, right? Are you spending your money on organic? Are you trying to grow your own food? Are you getting the right bitters and herbs and different things? Are you getting high vibrational food? Is your speech and your intention and your values and even how you earn money, are you doing a contribution to humanity? Is there some sort of service? And not everybody can, not everybody's called to. But I think when you have this powerful energy and chart, the Virgo sun and the South Node, there is a clear indication of a focus on the gut health and purging and cleansing. Because Virgo season, right, we're kind of like starting anew, right? Even though, let's say, whether we're on that type of calendar, it's, you get into leading up to autumn and the equinox and Libra season, right? And this is when the sun starts to, fade, right? Like think of the seventh house, sun is setting, right? Well, it's setting on the year as we go to winter, right? And a lot of the ancients felt like winter was the equation or equal to death, right? Because the days were shorter and you had less daylight and you couldn't plant and grow food. So it was scarce food and survival, right? These were challenging times. And so remember with the Virgo sun and South Node, there's this purging in the second house, right? Of our five senses, our values, our self-worth. What do we really value? What are our second house's possessions? What do we need, right? And so we need healthy food, right? We need to make sure that we have some savings for a rainy day, for anything that could come up through autumn and winter, right? So I love this chart because it's really, it's such a teaching moment. I'm kind of baffled, like how when I brought this up, because one thing about this Mars in Libra I want to talk about, right? Sorry, it's there now, but you see it's moving kind of slow. It's at this 16th degree, but Mars in Libra is kind of, remember, Mars is property, land, the soldier, the warrior. It cuts, separates, and divides. And when you're dealing with it in the third house in Libra, it's really dealing with a lot of things with your neighbors and arguments and like, oh, what did you say? Or, oh, your grass is too high, and oh, your kids are always, yelling and putting things in my yard. And so there's going to be a lot of finger pointing and passive aggressive behavior, I think, during this time, because we're seeing there's a lot of spiritual overwhelm and a lot of noise. And we were talking about that earlier before we started, the recording, but, just a lot of confusion and a lot of things going on. And so I think with this, and then you're seeing the Sag moon in the fifth house, we're dealing with our beliefs and our philosophies. And remember, the Sag moon is very much, right? Alana and Janice have it. It's very much like do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Remember, Sag is the law. Libra's associated with law, but Sag is like the higher law, the God's law, right? What is your wisdom, beliefs, and philosophies? Right? What are we, how are we supposed to really live beyond the Ten Commandments, right? We talked about with Micah Dank, right? From the Egyptian Book of the Dead, right? The 42 positive affirmations. I have not killed. I have not coveted or performed adultery with my neighbor's wife, right? Not like I will not, I have not, right? And so that comes before the Ten Commandments. And so that's very Sag moon in the fifth house, in terms of even teaching this to our children, right? I'm thinking not just of the mystery schools, I'm also thinking of, we can't worry about what the schools are not doing. We've got to let these kids know what cursive is so they can read, right, the Constitution. It's very intentional what's happening. And so that means for us as parents and grandparents, we can't just let that slide. But we ourselves have got to practice our own cursive, right? We were talking about that a little bit last night. And I think it's powerful even doing automatic writing and things like that. But the Sag moon in the fifth house, there's a lot about the wisdom and beliefs from the past coming up now to guide and teach us in the right direction. What's new is really old. What's old is new. A lot of these thoughts and concepts, this is all coming up from ancient times, and a lot of us are just remembering because we've already known it, and that's why some of this is so passionate for us, or some of it seems so intuitive, or some of it seems so familiar. It's like when you hear certain things, you're like, I kind of already knew that. And I don't know if any of you guys, and you can share if you experienced this growing up as a child, but there would be times when I would pick up a book and I'd start to read it, and I was like, I've already read this, or I know this already. Like, did you ever experience that as a child? Like, it's very weird, but I distinctly remember that, and it would always blow me away. You know what I mean? Did any of you guys ever experience anything like that, or even as an adult? You know?
For me, it always came through music.
Mm, okay. Yeah. And that can happen, and I like that you said that, because what is the fifth house? The Sag moon, right? And think about that. That's the Jupiter. And so Jupiter's in Cancer, and the fifth house, children, this is also the wisdom and power and beliefs of the sacred knowledge of the women, the divine feminine. And so who needs to lead us in what you were saying earlier, Janice? The compassion, the empathy, the grace and mercy. I've been telling you guys for probably over a year now that we have to practice that for ourselves first, then to our loved ones, right? Just like on the airplane, Saturn, the karmic teacher. So even, if you want to kind of look at it in this chart, and this is for the Leo risings, and we'll go from there to Virgo next, but Saturn in the eighth house, right? And outside of the conjunction, because it's outside of 10 degrees, but they're in the same house. They could kind of hear each other not so bad because it's only 11 degrees apart. Conjunct the Pisces North Node. It's literally what I was saying earlier. How are you doing with the compassion? How are you doing with the patience, the empathy for one another, the holding space, the healthy boundaries, the positive affirmations, the spiritual discipline. Saturn in the eighth house, it's really kind of pulling us in to the remembrance of we are all one, and we have been probably every gender, every culture, every ethnicity. There's no way for us to count how many souls there are. Supposedly, we're up to 7 or 8 billion here on the planet now. Who really knows, right? There's no real legitimate count. But do you ever wonder, like, how many souls are there that have ever lived? You know what I mean? Is it just the souls that are here now because they've been recycled? These are questions that I ponder. And when you have Saturn and Pisces in the eighth house, these are the types of lineage and memories that can come in. Because Saturn, it holds the DNA. It's not just karma, it's the bone structure, the lineage, that memory. Think of the archetype of Capricorn and Aquarius and then exalted in Libra, right? It's weighing the scales of justice, it's law and order, it's the authority, but it is that sage old wisdom of I think of the grandmother in Capricorn, the grandfather in Aquarius, and sometimes Saturn shows up in the chart as just the authority in your life, which could be, mom or dad too. We tend to associate it more with the masculine, right? Father time, so it could be your father. But when I see it in Capricorn, I definitely equate it to the grandmother archetype. And some people also look to Neptune as that as well. But, with this chart, it's just really powerful that the North Node and Saturn being in the eighth house. And I told you I've seen certain patterns and research, and whether it's Michael Jackson's chart or other people, the North Node and eighth house, you sometimes really do see a measure of wealth and that experience in lifetime. And then you always see something very different or peculiar or strange around the death. And remember, the North Node Rahu is very consuming, right? So it's consuming the money, other people's money, inheritance, all that. So this is a time where Leo risings could even go through inheritances and stuff like that. But it may be an inheritance that's not financial. It could be a spiritual inheritance and remembrance, right? So you see that with the North Node and Saturn there. And so that's really powerful to think about. And I think just in general, Leo risings, you may find yourself at this time of really stepping into a new spiritual suit that is different from the archetype of, hey, look at me, all eyes on me, shining bright like a diamond, spotlight energy, right? That's a little different. But remember, we're still dealing with the Uranus and Gemini trining the Pluto in Aquarius, right? And so, and that's in this chart for Leo, 7th to 11th house energy. But that trine is at this time also for us to understand that we have at our access, at our fingertips, as I wrote in my newsletter, the ability for psychic capabilities, mediumship, to come back to being the midwives, the doulas, the death doulas, that you don't have to be in the quote unquote Western system for women have been giving birth in fields and villages and anywhere forever, right? And you shouldn't be sitting on your back. That goes against gravity. It's illogical, right? Women used to squat and give birth, and you see that in ancient Kemet in the drawings. So, there's a lot that we've got to reimagine and rethink, but Uranus and Pluto is a lot of soul memory. Uranus is is your soul seeking freedom and revelation, breaking the structures, fracturing the norms, but it's higher consciousness. Pluto's the soul psychology, that we are to transmute and heal the pain, trauma, and crisis from childhood and past lives, but psychologically to remember through the shadow work and the pain comes the revelation and truth and more authenticity in Aquarius to 2044. This is the general energy of the chart, but also, starting with the Leo risings. And I just think it's a beautiful energy because remember, we're going through this time of Jupiter in Cancer. And I was talking about that Sag moon because you look at the ruler and Jupiter of the Sag moon, it's in Cancer. And here for Leo risings, the 12th house, it's really having us tap in to the collective and the spiritual realms, but these ancient memories that we can get in our dreams, in the subconscious, unconscious mind, in the Akashic, in the, Taurus field, and all of it, and awakening not just our emotional intelligence, but the divine feminine. Because, you talk about the Eve gene, and, I saw a gentleman, he shared this video, and this is not knocking anybody at all, but this is just, what we know knowledge-wise and what we're dealing with here. But the awakening and the remembrance of the indigenous brown woman, when that Eve gene and that divine feminine and that power truly awakens and gets back in the right position of the portal and the goddess, it's like you guys can control the weather. You could stop the wind. You can pause the rain. You can do, you know what I mean? And it's almost like funny because Micah spoke to that a little bit about that whole Wonder Woman thing and where that came from, if you guys saw the interview. But it's really, that's you ladies here today. And so, I just want everyone watching in the collective, to know that, like, you're going to see a lot of female empowerment, but in the healthy way, not what we've been dealing with, like the Barbie movie and toxic masculinity and men are all bad. And no, that's not, no, that's co-opted silliness. I'm talking about sacred womb knowledge. I'm talking about the portal power. I'm talking about man and woman and the ankhs, right? The man, woman, child, that unity and that power, because you guys were the healers, the medicine women. You guys were the spiritual seers, right? And so, and it's not that men don't have power. It's just that we have power and gifts in different ways, and that's okay. And I think as men, as divine masculines, we also have to hold space to know that you guys were the herbalists and the medicine woman and the healers, not witches, right? The true healers that took care of the children, the villages, the families. And you were the ones that give us the answers spiritually. Now, men have visions and dreams too, right? You think of Ezekiel and the book of Daniel and stuff like that. And I know I've always had prophetic dreams of the future. But I just am speaking of this chart and this energy. And so to see that energy awaken, I really feel that during this transit, a lot of that is going to come through. But this is the key. It's about the women and divine feminine softening, not being in your right hand masculine energy, being in the receiving, intuitive, feminine, receptive energy. Now, we all have feminine and masculine in us. But I do think Saturn and Pisces in the feminine, mutable water sign, water holds the memory. The planet, 3/4. Our body's 3/4. Everything's in the water. You hear conversation of people saying, God is the water, right? God's in the water. I mean, hey, it's a big concept. I can't refute it or disagree or say nay or no, right? Because supposedly we're at the firmament, water's above, water's below. But we know what water does, and you think about Pisces Saturn, it sustains life. The container, that's Saturn. And so I really just think this is a beautiful chart and a time for all of us and for Leo risings to tap into the realms of the 3D and 5D and tap into that memory. Okay? Now, any questions? This is sort of the general, but we're going to kind of, treat this as the Leo and then go to the Virgo. So we're going to move to the 7th house. Any questions before we go there in terms of this chart or just what you're seeing? Oh, and another thing, a lot of protection of pets at this time and animals. With the Virgo South Node more associated with dogs and Mars more with cats. 2nd house, 3rd house, a lot of talk, protection, communications. Mars Libra, we haven't seen much. I don't follow it, but you haven't seen any big outbursts in the news about PETA. Well, September 1st to February 20th, there could be some big thing coming back up with them too as well. But just in general, wanting to, you know, and I think of Libra about fairness and justice. Mars is also property and land. So I think there's going to be some communications, and even this even goes into what's going on now with redistricting about lands and things being kind of, that's literally Mars Libra third house. What's just and fair about measuring or marking off land and who owns this and that. So a lot of these, themes are going to come up. Okay. So Virgo rising. So, Saturn, we switched the dial, Saturn Pisces in the seventh house. And so, for this transit, Virgo risings, you could be seeing a lot of things about the marketplace, the contracts, negotiations. You may literally want to remodel your kitchen. But, there could be a lot of compassion that you need to hold for people you are in relationships with. Could be marriage, could be good friends, could be business partnerships, but this is something for you to consider in terms of how are the boundaries? How are you implementing, spiritual practices with the other half? Remember, the seventh house is always like a two-sided mirror. It's you, but it's you in relation to others. So when you are shopping to measure the rice, beans, and meat, when you're signing contracts, getting new car, new health insurance, life insurance, a new cell phone, these are seventh house events. They're kind of like sixth house mixed with seventh house events, because this is your work and daily routine. So in your daily routine, you're going to the grocery store, but when you purchase it, that's in the seventh house. Does that make sense? Because it's like, so just think of it like that. Like when you start to break down the chart to aspects of your daily life, you get so much clarity, but then you even get more detailed nuance in terms of like how you're moving during the day, right? You're waking up, and when you leave your house, it's like a fourth house, sixth house, seventh, 10th house story every day. Like if you get up and go and in your car and go to work, that's like a fourth, sixth, seventh, 10th house story, right? When you're going to bed at night, right? That's like you're returning to the 12th house. So it's like, and then you could say, okay, the actual awakening is, the seventh house, right? When the sun rises, the horizon. So, it's really good to master these houses so then you can kind of see these alignments and connect it. So, one thing I would say for the Virgo risings too, they just have to watch the arguments with family with Mars Libra in the second house during this time. And this is going to take us through the holidays. So we got to hold compassion for people we're spending the holidays with. I haven't looked at the charts. Remember last year, Thanksgiving and Christmas, both times we had Scorpio moons. So I don't know, things got a little intense, one of those times in the Taylor house, how you guys experienced last Thanksgiving and Christmas. But that's something I got to look at, for maybe do like a coffee talk about it, because it can be very helpful. Like we want to use astrology to really just help us to deal with actual daily life events, because that's how it's supposed to assist you. It's supposed to make your life easier, especially when you're using it for good. And it's not just for like love and getting a lot of wealth and money. It's like, hey, how do I show up at my job? And how am I dealing with my children? How am I dealing with my grandkids? How am I dealing with my spouse? What goes on in this part of my home? Like, it's that detailed and that practical. So then we can use it to always help us get truth and understanding and wisdom, so that we're moving with more compassion and empathy, like honoring the Saturn. Because that's the key at this time too, you guys. As it's closing up this chapter, when you respond to your abilities and you honor Saturn, remember Saturn, the greater malefic, wants to give you more gifts. Rewards is a key Saturn word, but more gifts, rewards, and blessings than Jupiter and Venus ever can. And remember, Cancer and Leo, the two most pure signs. So our wisdom, beliefs, philosophies are in Cancer, exalted, very pure. And then our relationships, money, car, vehicles, food, arts, culture, entertainment, and finances, Venus, are in Leo, very pure, very childlike pure. So, I think there's an element of, and then I always think of Pisces, the book of Ephesians, the God by Christ like love. There's a real theme for this transit from September to February of purity, compassion, and more love and empathy, joy and gratitude, right? You think of Cancer. Cancer is nurturing, caring. These are words right now that are not in our lexicon every day enough, right? They're almost like fading away fast. And no, this energy and this transit and us, we've got to be the light and bring those words into the forefront more. So Virgo risings, that's going to be important in terms of how you're moving with other people, whether it's relations, business, marriage, just, purchasing things. And I think that the Saturn there in the seventh house is like saying you also have to have discipline in your spending, right? Because remember, Venus, Leo in your 12th house, that could get to some overspending. And Virgo risings, no eating in the bedroom. So Libra risings, right? The Mars on the ascendant, woof, you're going to be feeling some, Marvin Gaye, sexual energy, sexual healing. You're going to need to burn off your energy and work out a lot. But the Pisces is in your sixth house. So I got to download you guys the other day, but this is really important for the collective, really for everybody, but specifically extra attention for Libra risings. Mira, ven aquí, escuchen, come a little closer, right? Saturn, Pisces, sixth house for this transit for 6 months or whatever. Please take care of your feet, literally. Bath, shower, sit down with the lotion. Take the time. If you can't do it, you rush it out in the morning at work. If you do a little rinse off or bath or shower in the evening, depending on your lifestyle, just sit there and rub on your feet. I am maniacal intentional about my feet because, being a native New Yorker, we didn't rely on cars, the train, and I relied on Mutt and Jeff, right? So I always would take care of my feet. Now I kind of needed to because I have the Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble feet. I got, I got big feet. Wear a size 13. So I got big flat feet, a gift from my dad, and I've had multiple surgeries, but I've always, nobody told me this, I just intuitively knew, I guess, as a young man, I always took care of my feet. So I want Libra risings to think about the healthy boundaries in their daily routine at work. I want them to think about their health and to take care of their feet and their toes. This could be a time where maybe you could karmically, maybe you could lose some pets and maybe bring in a new pet. But there also needs to be some compassion and empathy, Libra risings. Listen to this, to people you are in service to, but maybe people that provide services for you, from a gardener to a babysitter to a housekeeper to a maintenance man, someone who fixes your air conditioning, your plumber. A little bit more compassion and empathy. That's what the sixth house is. It is people that we are in service to, but people that are in service to us as well. Okay, co-workers, bosses. So, there could be some karmic things in your daily routine that you're experiencing. And Libra rising is a lot of stuff going on with the transformation of the children and even education. Remember, you guys, fifth house is high school and college, but that's also where adults could be returning back to school. That's a ninth house experience, okay? Because the ninth house is master's, PhD, but it's still education. So fifth and ninth house is where we could be continuing our education or going back to school, okay? So just be mindful of that. And remember, with this energy, Mars on the ascendant, you're going to have to work out a lot more, Libra risings, and kind of like to burn off that energy because it'll be very strong for you. Now, Scorpio risings, you got Saturn, Pisces in your fifth house, right? We're dealing with Juno and Vesta and Lilith on the ascendant. So the empathic energy and being extremely intuitive will be very strong. And the Sag moon in your second house, your intuition is going to be on high. But with Saturn, Pisces in the fifth house, there's a lot about the discipline and boundaries for your children, Scorpio risings. I'm talking to myself. Now, have we hit any of your risings here? Anybody so far? Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio? I guess not. But, Scorpio is me. So, with the fifth house, Saturn, Pisces, there's even, compassion that needs to be implemented along with the spiritual discipline with your children, but through what you create, your creative self-expression. And remember, let's not forget, Pisces itself, like Leo and Libra, are probably the three most creative signs, and then Gemini, top four. But Pisces itself holds that energy of spirituality, imagination, and creativity. Even the most stoic Pisces, I laugh, a lot of Pisces guys that I know, they could be real serious and stoic, but behind the scenes, they're like playing guitar or writing poetry. There's always a creative side to a Pisces, male or female. I mean, it's just the spiritual realm is where creativity holds. And Leo, the same thing, the reflection back to God, source, creator, is creativity. That's why Venus is in its planetary joy in the fifth house. Okay, so the fifth house is also your heart chakra, your back. So definitely Saturn Pisces, Neptune's disease, Pluto's virus, but we just got to always remember when Saturn can be chronic issues and arthritis. So yeah, it's for the feet, but we also got to watch our backs, Scorpio risings, okay? And watch your back too, right? but I also think about, being able to express yourself with more compassion and empathy for your children, but for even students or teachers when you're dealing with education, any, grandchildren or children that may have a Scorpio rising, education. I had a child say something about a teacher, and I was like, well, I went to parent-teacher night, and I think you're misjudging the teacher. The teacher's just more old school, and they're this and that or whatever, and they have three daughters and da-da-da. They're not what you're thinking, So, I just was trying to explain that to one of my sons, because now my other son has the same teacher that an older son had. And he kind of likes the teacher. And I said, yeah, you don't have to be influenced by how your brother viewed the teacher. Give the teacher some space and let them develop a relationship with you and see how you view them. You know what I mean? So those are the things, literally the themes that can come up for Scorpio risings, and it played out for me. And so you'll see that. For Sag risings, the moon and the ascendant, this transit, people are going to be coming up to you, Sag risings. Anybody here with a Sag rising? And just like verbally vomiting on you their life story for this 6 months, right? Because the moon's in your ascendant. And Sag risings, it rules the hips and thighs. You can retain a lot of water. But Saturn in your fourth house, from September to February, please watch the roof and the plumbing in your home, Sag risings, right? Because I've seen Saturn do it. It happened to me when it was in Aquarius, literally water issues in the roof. So, this could be washing machine, dryer, a dishwasher. Just pay attention to the plumbing, the toilets leaking, because that can literally come up. But there's a lot about your mother's lineage that you may want to tap into, Sag risings. Mom, grandma, great-grandma, and maybe bringing up some of their routines. And if you have not done it, Sag risings, please. I know some Sag risings are watching on a replay. Get the water feature for your home. Not only does it calm the emotional mind, it can also help you with spiritual practices and your imagination and creativity. When you have a water in the fourth house, it's really important, home office or in your home, or water in the 12th house, to get a water feature or to be able to see water in your bedroom. Almost like if you have an earth sign, literally in the 12th house, you should have a plant in the bedroom. Fire sign, maybe some candles in the bedroom. So, these are ways to literally use the chart to support and benefit you. So please, Sag risings, consider the water feature. They're not that expensive. You don't need a crazy fancy one with the sound and the colors. It could just be water cycling, okay? And watch out for some stuff for some fake friends, groups and organizations, Mars, Libra, in the 11th house, things could come up. So my Capricorn risings, anybody here with a Cap rising? I guess we haven't touched on you guys yet, but that's Saturn in the third house and the Sag moon in the 12th. So there could be some things with mom or even some trips abroad, but in the local community and even on social media, you've got to have healthy boundaries and maybe take little intermittent breaks from September to February off of social media. Like, have healthy discipline with, like, okay, I'm going to do only an hour a day, or I'll do an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, right? Because we can talk to the kids about it, you guys, but even as grown adults, we've got to kind of limit our time on these cell phones. The computers are not quite as bad as the cell phones. The cell phones, and I still recommend, for me, I do it because I'm visually impaired, but every human should do it. You have to have the little blue protector on your glasses, your frames, when you're spending time on these smart TVs, smart computers, smart cell phones. The light itself, it's so bright, it's affecting your retina. Sometimes I'll look at videos and I don't directly look at the phone. I'm to the side so that light is not bearing in my eye. Does that make sense? Like, really be intentional about it. Saturn Pisces, it's like, what's the third house? Social media. Your friends, your neighbors, younger siblings, local community. We got to have boundaries, but discipline. And maybe this is where, hey, maybe you reach out to a younger brother or sister and be like, hey, do you want to do some breath work with me? Maybe you send them a video about light language, or you send them something about stretching or yoga, or, and also I think that this is where we have to watch out and have some compassion even in our neighborhood for our neighbors, I've been saying that old adage, right? If I've got strawberries and blueberries and you got broccoli and kale and we trade, then we both got fruits and veggies. And, that's been sort of my mantra since the North Node was in Gemini and the podcast boom. But it's that hand-in-hand exchange that we're going to have to not only have our tribe over the internet, but in our local communities. Even if you only can find one or two neighbors in your community, when the sugar honey IT hits the fan, do you have a barter trade system locally? Are you connected in with a farmer's market that you could be able to be like, hey, can I meet you here? And we get, I give you some cash or some silver, and you give me like a whole thing of like avocados and broccoli, and I'm being dead serious. Like, I mean, I'm always faith over fear. We were talking about it last night, and, and my wife was saying, oh, don't worry about, I'm not worried about nothing. But as a Virgo, I'm prepared. Okay. And it's proven to be correct in my life. I'm always seeing 10, 20 years ahead. And I've had a lot of storms, but I've survived them all because what? I was prepared. So sometimes the Virgo way is a good way. Okay, I'm just saying, and it's not just only Virgos that are prepared. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, but that is a very earth, bringing things into physical reality. And we're talking about a Capricorn rising, right? And you're having the South Node and the Sun in the ninth house. So these logical, analytical beliefs, with the Sun and South Node in the ninth house, they can be very helpful at this time, and just dealing with this energy. And Mars Libra, there could be some arguments at work and separations from your job, Capricorn risings. So now our Aquarius rising friends, Pluto, you already know Pluto to 2044, but you're dealing with Saturn and the North Node in your second house of how you earn money, how you speak, your intuition, your values, your self-worth. Number one, let's not forget, on the low vibration Saturn, we could have limiting beliefs, and you could have issues and fears and anxiety and stress about money and how you earn money. So this is where you've got to tap into the second house, speech, your throat chakra, speak positive affirmations, abundance over your life, right? So that's going to be very important for the Aquarius risings. Like, part of the Pluto and the Ascendant experience is about transmuting the negative self-talk and negative beliefs, doing the healing and shadow work. So when you experience Saturn and Pisces in your second house for the last time for a while, you are implementing the healthy boundaries, putting in the hard work, but even having compassion, empathy for yourself. Like, listen, sometimes, especially when you're a Saturn-ruled descendant, Capricorn and Aquarius, I'm talking to you, you got to take a day off. You get to rest too sometimes. And this is hard sometimes for a lot of Virgo, Capricorn, Aquarius placements. There's a lot of pressure and obligation to achieve and work, and you got to breathe. So if you guys have a lot of those energies and planets, just, really look at it and acknowledge, like, where are you not taking a rest If your body is telling you and you're going through stuff that you need to rest, please honor it. Saturn in Pisces, it's healthy boundaries, but sometimes those healthy boundaries are like to yourself to like take a break. So Aquarius rising's like, hey, you can take a nap, you can take a break. But also remember, you have to be disciplined with your speech. And the North Node, it's really, even as Janice was saying earlier, we've got to really speak out, Aquarius risings, about more compassion, empathy, grace, and mercy. It's going to be so needed and necessary with this transit. Um, you know, you're dealing September, October, November, December, January, February. So like, it's like a full 5.5 months. So please, like, know that you're going to feel this, and it's kind of a reboot and a recheck with the retrograde of Saturn, the karmic teacher. And if you answer it, you'll reap the rewards as we go into the transition of Saturn Aries till 2029. Okay, so Pisces risings. I know we got Pisces risings here. So Saturn in the North Node and ascendant, and you can obviously ask about, I know you have placements there, but in general, just remember that South Node and the Sun at this time, and for this transit, being in the seventh house, there are some things that in the marketplace or in relationships or business partnerships or marriage that you may need to purge, release, and let go. But that may not be the person. It may be the criticisms, the thought of nitpicking or perfectionism, the being critical. But at the same time, you want to bring in, because remember, Virgo's so logical. The South Node in Virgo is one of the hardest nodal access placements, and I have it natally too, because the South Node doesn't want to deal in logic. The South Node just wants to be spiritual. And the nodes are considered to be malefics. And so if you're not kind of honoring the South Node K2 in terms of the service to humanity, the spiritual side of Virgo, it can get very toxic in the finger pointing, the perfectionism, this negative talk or self-talk, or being nitpicky. And so we want to release that. And then with the North Node, it is like literally Pisces risings, you're already shapeshifters and magic and so pure. You're kind of like aliens to this planet. But with Saturn and the North Node there for this 5.5 months, it's really screaming to like hold space for yourself, to see your inner magic, to really get into the positive affirmations and be corny, maniacal, and hokey about it. I love you, and put your name in, you know what I mean? And so like that's, and remember when Saturn's on the ascendant, natally or in transit, you're forced to honor it even more. You know what I mean? Like it's like, I see it because I have a child with it. It's like if you're not implementing the discipline, you will get into trouble and hiccups, and it's just like the universe is just like will shake you. Saturn's very strong on the pillars of the chart, right? First, fourth, seventh, and 10th. And I experienced it. I told you I didn't get married at 37. I have it in the seventh house. I had to go through a lot of like karmic relationship lessons before I could get prepared to marry my wife, and had to get more disciplined and more structured and organized and respond to your abilities and honor Saturn. When it's in transit in the first house, Pisces, protect your energy. And you have to do that anyway, because you are, like I say, and some people don't know the analogy, but I love to say it because it's so cool, true blood, Sookie Stackhouse. You are fairy blood. And out there in the jungle, in the 10th house, the 6th house, the wolves just want to bite you because you have a different vibration. Pisces rising, remember, the two most unique and rare ascendants are Aries and Pisces. Aries, like Aquarius, extremely pure and authentic. But Pisces is the most spiritual, magical, like alien to this planet. It's like you're here, but you're kind of not. And Saturn wants you to ground. So Pisces risings, I need you to drink more water, but you need to ground more in nature, into your physical body. Almost like literally what we were doing last night. That's very important. And those nature walks, right? You already spoke about that, right? This morning, that's gonna have to become like almost like, I guess, I think you already do it, right? Every day, right?
every day.
Every day. And for this transit, that's the recipe. And that's gonna empower you, right? And then it's also gonna reap the rewards because, you know, I can look back now from my childhood after realizing that what my mother was a Pisces rising, and I see the magic. When you guys are out in public, it's like you have like a bag full of like pixie dust and magic, and when you throw it on people, you light up their lives. You know what I mean? And don't stop doing that. Have the healthy boundaries. You have to always protect and guard your energy because when you return home, you got to kind of like transmute it out and shoot it out and literally put on your house clothes, wash your hands and face, but be be the light in public because it's so needed. That compassion, empathy, grace, and mercy, agape, Christ-like love, Pisces risings. It's why do you think Venus is exalted in Pisces, you guys?
Yeah,
You know,
that's where I'm challenged, Derek, what you just said, and that is the protection factor because I'm not as diligent about that as I need to be. And I think it's because I just don't know what tools are best.
literally like taking your hands and like kind of like cutting the cord, right? Energetically, like going sideways and cutting up, cutting the cord. Pretend like there's scissors in your hand. Visualize it in your third eye, and then
Mhm.
transmuting the energy out in the cement or before you get in your car, before you enter your house and the grass, whatever, just like transmuting it out. But then when you come home, you have to change the clothes if you're not going back out because the clothes, the energy comes to the fabrics.
Wow, even if you have like organic cotton and linen on,
I
it does
I
it?
That I can't say I've scientifically proven that. I'd have to research that, but I
Okay.
feel that the fabric's not covering everything and we still have our
Right.
skin exposed. So yeah, I think it's good to change it. But at least to wash your hands and wash your face. But my mantra that I've always, and I've heard it from other spiritual teachers, but it makes sense logically because even if you're in a store, you know, sometimes our jacket, our shirt, we can kind of like bumper cars, we kind of touch people. But remember, the auric field is 6 feet apart, so you're touching people when you're not touching people, right? So think of it like that. And so even if it's a high vibrational clothes, what if somebody's synthetic clothes is touching your linen, wool, or organic cotton?
Mhm,
That's got
mhm.
to affect it in some way, right? I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just, using my Virgo brain. So I just think it's a good practice. It's good spiritual hygiene, right?
I have to get better at that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not saying it's easy. But at least when we're aware, then it's at our fingertips. We're like, oh, okay. I was out in a busy mall or a busy market today. Let me go home and wash my hands and face and just put on a different shirt and put on another
That's
just
helpful. That's
yeah.
very helpful.
Because I
Thank you.
think you'll, and I guess this is my thing, right? I'm the very practical Virgo. I was joking with that with Quintella before we came on. Like I still need a little proof and evidence. I'm still deep water faith and really spiritual, but the Virgo in me is like, hmm. And I got that confirmation last night when I saw my aunt. But it's the same thing where do the test yourself. Come home one day, don't change nothing, see how you feel. And then the next day, come home, wash your hands, wash your face, change your clothes, and see how you feel. There
You
may
know,
be,
it's interesting. There are times when I come home from being out and about running errands and I feel it really strongly. And I'm like,
I
oh, let me
know,
go jump in the shower real quick.
I know you do.
Right? It's when it's just like oppressive. But
Yes.
what I'm not yet, I'm going to get better at this, is when it's not really just bombarding me,
Uh-huh.
right? And I'm not feeling it doesn't mean it's not there.
Because it could be subtle.
Yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I have to just make it a discipline that regardless of whether or not it's hitting me over the head or not, it's there and I need to deal with it. And yeah.
And I would say not just Pisces risings, you guys, all the water signs, it's more apropos and can be more of a challenge and affect you more. Cancer and Scorpio should do the same. The water energetically, it pulls in on the ascendant. Remember, the ascendant is your aura, your physical appearance, your outer mask, your I am energy in that sense. So that's how you're seen in the world. People don't see this Sag moon. People don't, The Virgo sun, I'm referring to this chart, the ascendant is what's showing up in people's faces. Okay. So that's
What
really
about incense, Eric? Did
incense.
that, I use incense in sort of in that way.
Okay. I think it can be very
Um,
cleansing. I'm not an
okay.
expert on them, but I know the sage is very good and there's others. But yeah, burning, that those are always good cleansing practices. Candles,
I use
incense,
candles.
sage, yeah. I mean, and then you always anything with salt, right? Just like they use no refrigeration in ancient times, they used the salt in the meat. That's why salt had so much value. It's the same
Mhm.
thing with, salt getting in the tub. That's one of the best cleansers. But also even drinking it. Remember, our water is not really natural spring living water. Most of the water we drink, you guys, is dead. And please never drink water out of plastic. But drinking the water, if we could put a pinch of the Himalayan, or I don't know if the Himalayan safe for drinking, maybe it's the Celtic sea salt,
Yeah.
and or a little packet of minerals, that's very beneficial. And then always remember you're getting the real hydration from the H3O, which is the living fruit that's electrically charged from the sun. So let's get to Aries risings. Okay, that's Sag moon in the ninth house, and you're dealing with the Pisces in the 12th. So that's a lot. Saturn and the North Node in the 12th house. Um, I visually just immediately see for Aries risings, like in your bedroom, you could have the water feature, but also just the discipline of like, okay, I'm not eating in my bedroom. I'm not using too much technology in my bedroom. Like that needs to be like almost like a sacred, hygienic space for an Aries rising. Very pure, very clean, and with the Saturn there, like, hey, just do what we should all be doing, right? Like 30 minutes before you go to bed, turn off television, electronics, airplane mode, do not disturb, the whole nine. If you're inclined, unplug the internet, because when we sleep with the internet at night, that Wi-Fi is just pinging all over your home. It's just not good for your health. So Aries risings really think about that. Um, and then you're dealing with the Virgo South Node and the Sun in your sixth house, right? Um, oh no, no, yeah. I'm sorry, yeah, sixth house. So you're definitely there's some opportunities to adopt a pet or save something or or have some spiritual connections in your daily routine. Aries risings, you may just like, your local banker or grocery store teller, like you always have like the deepest spiritual talks, or, you bring them cookies you made from home and they're like, oh, I have this for you, or here's a coupon, or, like you could develop those relationships. But, I think what's really important is also, tuning in to education and your beliefs with the Sag moon there. And also, there could be a lot going on because you still have Neptune on your ascendant. And so you got to watch, what's real, Neptune on the ascendant, people idealizing you being overly, rose-colored glasses idealistic. So that spiritual discipline at night will kind of ground you back into like cleansing the day, whatever you go through Aries rising. I think that can be really helpful for you. And even having those Pisces crystals under in your bed and under your pillow, with Saturn. But also, I would definitely, this would be a good time if you've never done it, Aries risings, book the chart reading with me, but definitely start your dream book, and I've got a whole process with that that can be extremely helpful and beneficial. So Taurus risings. Aha, I know a bunch of those. Right.
That's me.
Here we go. And on the replay as well. So Taurus risings. Okay. You're dealing with the Sag moon in eighth house. So there's a lot of wisdom and beliefs and connecting, to nature, but even to the esoteric occult knowledge. And really getting a lot of information from the veil of the 3D and 5D. And then you're kind of experiencing, you know, you got to watch out for the pancreas and the gut health with Mars and Libra at this time for this transit. You know, I don't know if you like spicy food, Gail, but this may be a
Love it.
I know, but this may be a time where it's going to jack your stomach up, girlfriend. You better leave it alone. It's like brand new. You got to love it and leave it alone. Take maybe just take a little break because I guarantee you may try it and then it doesn't turn out the way that it has been for you because Mars was literally in Libra. And so just make the
Mm,
adjustments to how you're feeling. But, with Saturn and Pisces in your 11th house, this may be where you need healthy boundaries with any groups and organizations you're a part of. Or you may see, like, wait a minute, all of a sudden this karmic pull, you've been so kind and thoughtful and compassionate to a certain friend or even an older sibling, and then they kind of there's a little deception, a little like, their behavior is a little confusing. And that's where the Saturn's coming in to say, hey, make sure you're still having the healthy boundaries. You know what I mean?
mm,
Make sure
okay.
you're implementing because this is something that sometimes Taurus risings forget because they could be so grounded and practical. Having the Pisces in 11th house, you could have literally some like friends that are always playing victim. Like, oh my God,
Yep.
like Gail, you don't call me enough. I'm always emailing you and you don't read my emails. Like, what? Like, I'm busy and I got back to you, like so just monitor that because Saturn is that karmic teacher, but it's into bringing the karmic lessons where it could be like, okay, it's time to put up the boundaries. Like, your older brother that's always like, like hip, just, hold me over to payday. Like, well, like we do this every month, Michael, like stop. Like, you know what I mean? So all you Taurus risings, just be mindful of that. But at the same time, this is where you can have more compassion and empathy for even a nonprofit or some charity organization, maybe stepchildren or step grandchildren. And then even, I don't know, I mean, we're still dealing with the South Node and the Sun in the fifth house, right? So there could be something of helping or being of service to children or grandchildren at this time for Taurus risings, right? Or teaching them about meditating or breath work or light language, But there's some service. Remember when we have the South Node and it's in Virgo, it's like putting down the logical brain and then putting in just the more of the service, like Mother Mary, right? And so just think about how that is for you in an educational way. Because, I think specifically for you, Gail, right, you have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. Are you sharing that and teaching it to someone?
Not really. I try,
Okay.
and sometimes, when I speak and people go the other way, then I'll stop because I know they're not open to it. But um, I'm open. I just gauge when I speak to people, and then I'll just add on what I know from
Yeah.
there.
And it's hard for Virgos because we mean so well and we're so pure that sometimes our feelings
Right.
get hurt because we're like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help you. That's all I want
Right.
to do is help you. And so I think sometimes people think Virgos are like the fingers pointing out, but it's like it's not a finger. It's like a hug or a hand to
Right.
like, and I've learned that over my life. It's a hard lesson for Virgos, but it's like it's not just reading the room, but it's also like we care too much sometimes and then it can get thrown back in our faces and we're like, really? Wow, okay. You don't want me to be kind to you? Like that, like that's been a shock for me. Like in this, like almost 55 years of life, like wow, like you don't like kindness? Okay, So, but that's a lesson to learn, and the South Node is there to kind of what purge and release your heart chakra. Oh my God, this is deep for Taurus risings, right? You have to kind
Mhm.
of like release that. Like some people just aren't ready for your heart, and that's a deep message. So
Yeah.
it's good to have that discernment to like where can I share this little spiritual empathy and compassion and be of service to people. And maybe it's more with children or grandchildren than it is with like grown folks who got, too much attitude. Um,
Right.
so, but I do think this is going to be nice. And remember for Taurus risings, the Jupiter in the third house, there's a lot in your local community about even with neighbors, maybe even finding other women in your neighborhood who are, want to tap into their divine feminine or emotional intelligence or sharing your wisdom, beliefs, and philosophies, and maybe even over social media, right? Maybe it's Gail's Instagram that needs to come up, and it's like, you know, Gail's Jewels, Daily Jewels or something that you drop on people, you know, starting a little blog or a little video blog or something. But, you know, Jupiter and Cancer, it's not like the young kids say the bag. You see that more in Leo, Aquarius, you know, Sag, Pisces, other placements. Jupiter Cancer, it's more about the sacred wisdom and knowledge. Yeah, there's money to be had, but I really feel like there's more expansion of the nurturing and caring, the divine feminine, the lineage, the home, the safety and security, you know, and the education. That's like homeschooling. That's, you know, remember I told you I think there's going to be more homeschooling. Oh, and so far, I don't know if you guys remember, Laura Bruno and I were talking about it. One thing I've noticed with Jupiter and Cancer, there has been, well, I don't want to throw this out there and it'd be bad, but there has been less school pewings, right? You haven't heard of that many. And that's Jupiter Cancer. That was one of my predictions. I think there's been a lot less. I really haven't heard of any. You know, now there's other bad stuff going on, but that was just my thought with Jupiter Cancer that it would kind of calm that down a bit. So, but Gemini risings, I know we have some here.
Yep.
Now, you know, obviously we've already talked about the Jupiter Cancer in your second, but this Saturn Pisces, right, and the nodes on your 10th and 4th, very important access. And, you know, there could be some things that come up karmically, you know, with dad, remembrance of dad, things from childhood. But this is also where, even with our children, where if we're playing the father role, or, you know, if the father is playing the role, you know, specifically for you, you know, having the compassion and empathy, you know, for that, but also having there is this call to have the spiritual service and spiritual food and more the humanity in the home, but in your emotional mind. So there's a lot of compassion and empathy, I think, even for you to share for your parents, you know, and whether it's verbally or writing letters, you know, and I'm sure you've already done it, but even to, like, in this transit, like, say it again, you know, I forgive you, I love you, you know, because sometimes we can hear a message in 2017, and then in 2025, oh, we hear the message, right? We didn't just hear it, we heard it, and we integrated into wisdom, into understanding, right? You know what I mean? So I think sometimes people think, and this happens to all of us, right? Oh, I've already healed that. Oh, I've already done this. It's like, trust me when I tell you, as long as you're breathing, there's opportunities for healing. And I know that even with all the inner child work I did, and I told you about Shariat Shara, and she's like, oh, what happened to you at 7? And I was like, oh no, you know, I did all this work at 6. Oh my God, Eric at 7 went through a lot too, you know? So it's like, you know, so it's very humbling, but I think that that's where I know that I'm nowhere near a finished work. And I think if we have that mantra, I think of Bruce Lee, like we're always the student, that keeps us a better teacher, but it always keeps us growing and learning. And remember, with Uranus and Gemini on your ascendant, your mantra is to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Nothing is going to stay stable, and it's okay. I mean, when this 7-year transit is done, 2034, you know, because it goes into Cancer for a bit and comes back and then goes back in permanently. So it is literally to 2034, not just 2033, because, you know, it does that dance like it's doing now, you know, November 7th, going back to Taurus. You'll wake up one day, 2034, and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe I even thought about not putting myself out there and showing up. I can't believe I thought about, like, not this, and you know what I mean? And you may even, like, be like, wow, I started a channel and it's a mother-daughter channel, you know what I mean? And she's dropping jewels with you too. Like, that's a concept that I don't see people doing. So, you know, these are things that, and ideas that, like, you just don't know. And so Saturn, I really feel in Pisces, and for you Gemini risings out there watching, it's wanting you to remember that it's okay to have a legacy. It's okay to your reputation being that I am a spiritual, compassionate soul, right? It doesn't mean that you allow people to take advantage of you. That's why Saturn is like, hey, Pisces, We need boundaries. You got Pisces in your 10th house. You need some freaking boundaries, okay? And so as it hits your moon or anybody that has planetary placements, just remember, and it's only going to go back, I think it only goes to, I haven't peeped it, but it may only go to 28 or 27 degrees. So it's not dipping that far back in, just so you guys know. But, in 5.5 months, it will definitely, I know it's going to hit 29 and I think it gets to 28. I'm not sure if it gets to 27. So it's just dipping its toe in. So, but just remember that that's also wanting you to take advantage of grounding and earthing in nature and get by some water and continue your spiritual daily practice, you know. But you've got to make sure you're dealing with the healthy boundaries because that's where it's almost like, in a way, you're kind of like a Pisces rising for this 5.5 months with Saturn there. You energetically, you have got to, in public, kind of like guard your grill, right? Like guard your energy so that when you come back home, Virgo, South Node, Sun, fourth house, you can like transmute it out and just like say, "Oh, I'm gonna have me a nice strawberry," and just like but this is a good time for Gemini risings to start a garden, even if you just start with like some herbs like basil, thyme, mint, whatever you can do, because hey, with all the information and technology and getting some copper and certain lights, we can grow inside the house. Right? Chantel was showing us, and Alana started doing it, growing a sweet potato. She's growing it in the house in the kitchen, and it's working. I'm like, whoa, that's cool. So so these are the things. Whether we have a house, an apartment, a little studio apartment, there's no excuses. We have the knowledge now. We go to YouTube University, and Gemini risings. You can grow food in your home. Virgo South Node, Virgo Sun. And we've got to think of ways for all of us, whatever sign you are, to become more self-sufficient. Okay. So Cancer
Okay.
risings. Any other questions, or you're good with that?
I did have a question. So with Saturn going into Pisces, you said it may not hit 27 degrees, but it may go to 28 and then 29.
Well, first it comes in at 29, right? You see over here, 29 to 59 minutes. And when remember that's September 1st, but
Got it.
it's, I don't know when it stops, and then it will pause, station, and then turn around to go back to Aries February 20th. So,
Okay.
in 5.5 months, Saturn doesn't move as slow as Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus, but Saturn still moves pretty slow. So I'm, like I said, you could just bring up the chart and check. If I would say if you look maybe up to November, December, because then I think it will probably start to move forward again. But I think it's going to get to at least 28 degrees. I just
Okay.
remember
And
seeing.
didn't you say 29 degrees is like a critical degree?
Yes, that's the analytic degree. So that's the
Okay.
thing, as it first comes in, it's going to be screaming at people, where's your compassion? What are you
Got it.
doing with your spiritual discipline? This honoring, God or creator or source 1 day a week, pooey, that's not enough. Like it's very, Saturn doesn't play. Like that's what I try to get people to get, this first or second or third Saturn return, but just in general, like if you're gonna honor any planet, like and I'm not saying you honor it like Saturnalia, like the other people honor things in a different way, but for positive, right? I'm always on the high vibrational positive. You gotta respect Saturn, because Saturn, we live in a Saturnian matrix bubble. Like Saturn will, it will kick your butt, just like Uranus. Like some of these planets, like people could say, oh, and that's why, like with the Vedic, like even if you notice during the pandemic, you had a lot of Vedic sidereal astrologers who started to look at the outer planets because they were affecting people. You get it? You know what I'm saying? They stop at Saturn and they use Rahu and Ketu. But there was a ton of Vedic astrologers who were doing videos on Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because they were in play and they affect us. You see what I'm saying? They're generational. They affect everybody. Nobody gets away from a Saturn opposition. I mean, a Uranus opposition, or Uranus transiting your first and seventh house, or wherever it is. You're going to feel it in any house. But, the angular houses, it's more, it's stronger. So Saturn at 29th degree, it's coming in and like, because Pisces, think in Aries, it's like sovereign. It's independent. It's like walk into your I am energy, be brave and courageous. And Pisces is like, oh, Pisces doesn't know what boundaries are. Pisces is like free flowing. It's like I'm up in the ethers. I'm in 10D. I'm in 3D. I'm creating my new D. I got my own 25D. Like Pisces is like in a whole nother plane. It's the ethereal plane, right? That's why Venus is exalted in Pisces. Pisces is unconditional pure love. I've never known true love until I married my Pisces wife. I've had my Geminis and I went through a Gemini Leo stage, this and that, and I kept getting my heart broken like a dodo, head against the wall, and I may have kind of dated a Pisces before, but not like officially, but like it's so funny, I intuitively knew, it was really weird, I intuitively knew that I was probably going to marry a Pisces woman. And this was like in my probably early 30s before, I got married at 37. So, but it's, that's why Venus Pisces people, they have a hard time in love and relationships because it's such a pure love. So just think of what Saturn is saying. It's like, hey, like Janice said earlier, you better have that compassion, empathy, grace, and mercy down to a T. You better have these boundaries down. But it's going to, at 29 degrees, it's going to get tested. That's
Yeah.
what I want all you signs to know as it
That's
goes
why I
through
was
Pisces.
asking you.
It
Yep.
is going to get tested. So in public, there's going to be a boss who's going to test your boundaries. In public, there's going to be somebody in the street that's going to be like, oh, your daughter was inappropriate doing this. And you're like, excuse you? I didn't ask you for opinion, Oh, your daughter grabbed something in a store. Children can't touch things. I mean, these are the types of things people are going to come out their face to you, and you're going to be like, oh, thank you for letting me know. But she's fine. You know what I mean? Like, you kill them with kindness, compassion. So we're going to get tested, y'all. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's going to happen. I mean, and I like to visually paint these scenarios because it's real life practical stuff. And you can see it. 10th house is the jungle. The 10th house is the jungle. It's your workplace, work environment. If the midheaven's there, it's the career and how you're energetically seen. But it is literally legacy, public image, reputation. Oh, I know the Taylor kid. Da, 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 da. It's the jungle. Okay? Cancer risings. We are dealing with it in your 9th house. And so this is about vacations. It's about publishing. It's about your wisdom, beliefs, and philosophies. And this is where you can have issues with teachers and professors. You could have issues or moments of crisis where you're like, you know what? My whole family's Catholic. I still kind of like the Pope, but I'm going through this change where like, I don't want any religion. I just want to be spirit. Like these are the experiences that can be coming up for you, Cancer risings. You know what I mean? And this is where you have to be careful being deceived by a guru, but you may also become or find your guru, your shaman, your spiritual teacher. But you have to have discernment. Saturn and Pisces want you to have spiritual discernment. And also you can go on some beautiful karmic trips. You may be called to go to Machu Picchu. You may be called to go to Kemet. You may be called to go to the Galapagos Islands, to Atlantis, Bahamas, or Nassau, Jamaica. And when you go, you may be like, oh, this is why I've been called to go here. It may literally, Cancer rising, especially going to travel to water, you may feel the answer why you were called to that place. But it also could be a time where you're like, you know what? This 5.5 months, I'm shutting everything down and I'm writing my book. I did that one year. I wrote my screenplay. It just so happened the NBA was on a lockout and it was 99. I was going to California and I was like, this is the perfect time. I don't have to watch my sports and I'm going to write my screenplay. And I wrote my first screenplay and went to LA and tried to shop it and I didn't sell it, but it was just the experience and I did some auditioning and stuff out there and then I realized it was the holy setup. That's when I became a born again Christian. So Saturn and Pisces, think of it also too, this is part of the process of closing out the age, the Piscean age of confusion, illusion, and deception. So this is an opportunity to get what? Very clear with your voice, Cancer risings. What do I believe? Not what I saw from this person or took this class or this. What does my intuition and what does my spiritual compass tell me that I to am honor or to believe? You know. Now, Jackie, you didn't say your rising. Which one were you? Do you want to? Jackie still here? I have questions about your rising. So, but you know what I mean? So, you know, we're back obviously to Leo, but this is really, I hope it's very helpful and beneficial, but no, we're going to get tested. And the test is in the themes, even with our compassion. People will push our buttons where we could lose our stuff and our compassion goes out the window. But then we want to recalibrate and be like, ooh, that wasn't nice. I shouldn't have, you know what I mean? And you'll see each house, like where, you know, 11th house, you weren't nice with groups or over the internet or with an older sibling. 10th house, you weren't nice to dad or somewhere in public. You know, 9th house, you weren't nice to a teacher or on vacation or you know, your father's teachings. You're like, oh, dad, you taught me nothing. 8th house, you weren't nice with, you know, kind of like your partner and their resources or you know somebody in the insurance or you know the IRS person that you know just called you and said there was something, oh, you're missing a paper. You like, the heck I am, and you lose it and stuff, and then you realize, oh, I didn't submit that. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, so there's places where the compassion and empathy is going to get tested. Right? 7th house with a business partner or a marital partner or relationship. 6th house with like a coworker, a boss, a pet. Maybe you're like mean with a dog or cat and you lock it out because, you know, like they pooped one too many times in your kitchen on your living room floor and you flip out and you hit the pet. You know, children, 5th house, right? Or, you know, if you're an educator with high school, college kids and you teach, right? Or with your children or even somebody you are in business with or something you're doing creative or like your friend says, oh, do you want to hear my song or poem? And you're like, that is terrible. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, you know, things like that. 4th house, something with your mom or in your home. You're just like raging one day and you like lose your compassion and you're not being patient with anybody in a home. Or if we're taking care of our elderly parents and use patience, right? Or not being compassionate. 3rd house with younger siblings or over social media or at work or you're doing sales, advertising, marketing. You could be like, you know, just losing it with people or even a neighbor. You know, this could be some serious neighbor battles, especially back to the Leo risings with Mars Libra there. But, you know, with the Saturn, you know, Capricorn risings, there could be stuff. 2nd house, it could be with your families, even your speech. You're just spewing stuff and you're being spiritually arrogant. Oh, well, you know, Buddhist is the only way. You know, oh, if you're not a Christian, you're like, da 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 da, I'll see you in hell. You know, whatever it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we've got to, and then back on, for 1st house, right? The Pisces risings, like, it could be, you're not showing the compassion to yourself. This is the hardest one, right? Because you got to be kind to you, right? The 12th house, you're not having the boundaries in your bedroom. You're not, you know, taking care of your proper sleep practice, your routines, you know, spiritual hygiene, or just even, you know, your spouse in the bedroom. You're being mean to them. You know, you're snatching a pillow and pulling a blanket and you're like, I don't care, you know, I got to go to sleep too. And you're just being all mean and nasty, right? You know, and that's everybody. So, you know, we're all going to go through stuff. And I think the key is with Saturn, having the compassion, empathy, grace, and mercy for yourself first, so then you could see where you're not practicing what you preach, or you're not practicing the kind of like the agape Christ-like love. And we all fall short of the glory. None of us are perfect. So give yourself the compassion, empathy, grace, and mercy. You make a mistake, admit to it. It's okay to, you know, this is the hardest thing for human beings to do, to say sorry or admit to being wrong. It's healthy when you do that. Say, my bad. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Right? What did I say last night? Hey, guys, I'm sorry. I was a little off and wrong. I got a little confused with the Virgo eclipses. The real legit Virgo solar eclipse, September 21st. Today, August 23rd, it's more kind of like a partial, but it's officially just a Virgo black new moon, which is still just as powerful because it's squaring Uranus. Right? I was wrong. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. See? So, you know, that's where we have to do that. That's growth as a human being. That's maturity. That's humility. And when we can all get to that place, it just makes it a better world, right?
Yep.
Because none of us are perfect. But I wasn't the only one, right? Other astrologers were doing the same thing. So, it's just, it's, there's so much, right? I just learned about the black moon. I didn't know that. I know about the blue moon. That's when there's two full, like we had the two Aquarius blue moons, I think a year ago. But I didn't know when it's a new moon and you have two, it's a black new moon. I just learned that. I didn't know. I mean, hey, you live and you learn. So thank you guys. This was so awesome. And, in closing, I just want everyone to really to remember that Saturn wants to give us the rewards and blessings. And it's nice that it won't be in the trine to Jupiter. It's kind of probably won't, North Node's going to separate and go to 17 degrees, so it won't be in an exact conjunction. It's not having real major hits to it like that aspect-wise. I mean, there'll be some transits as Mars will come in Libra and then go to Scorpio and trine it and in conjunction, and Mars might get to Sag. Can't remember the dates, might square it. But, overall, I think it's really going to be a testament to how we can hold space for ourselves. And when we have the self-love and the compassion and empathy and grace and mercy, if you practice it for yourself, then it's so easy to extend it to others. Because, it's the same thing. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else in a relationship and you don't love yourself? It's not going to ever happen. Not healthy-wise. And that's why we have such a high divorce rate. And for Virgo risings, if you're not over 28 and a half, try not to get married right now. Because Saturn's going to be there for this 5 months, 5.5 months. And, oh my God, I really preach that because I've just seen it with so many clients and so many charts. Oh, I got married at 24, I got married at 23, and they're coming and they're talking about love for their second marriage or whatever because they got divorced. The divorce rate in this country is absurd. It's high in other countries. I think it's probably the worst in America. I don't know factually the data, but part of it is that Saturn. And then it's even more of a thing when it's in the 7th house natally in your chart to literally wait till you're at least 29 or 30. But remember, I'll tell you, right, women, no surprise, women mature faster than men. It's like 25 to like 28. The cerebral cortex forming the medulla oblongata is when you become the full adult. Still the brain is forming and growing. And men, it's more like 27 to 31. So there's a lot of things we shouldn't be doing till our Saturn returns, right? If we could reimagine the world and reimagine and make humanity function better, which would be my dream, my little utopian island would be nobody gets married at 29. I don't care how much you love each other. You're just friends for a while. That's all. And what's wrong with developing a friendship?
Right.
That's what's got me up to 17 years.